if you know something about the challenges of actually running a middle market company, because it's not about kind of ad hoc or, it's a strategic approach.
Welcome back to the Raw Selection Private Equity Podcast. Back on the podcast for a second time for a Playbook series is Ted Clark. Ted Clark is a proven chief executive, now turned private equity investor working with Iron Path Capital. Ted's back for a Playbook series all focused on deal origination. If you've not already and you want to learn more about Ted Clark, check out his first podcast with us, which was all about how to grow from 30 million in EV to 1.4 billion in enterprise value. Something definitely not to be missed if you haven't already checked that out. But let's dive in. And Ted, thanks again for joining us again for the second private equity podcast session. So Ted, deal origination is a difficult and big challenge for a great deal of private equity firms currently and in previous times. So let's kick off with how you and Iron Path Capital are going about deal origination, please.
Sure. Well, let me start with a little sort of start with the big picture and then kind of narrow it down. I think one of the things that we see, just generally as a trend in middle market private equity investing is more specialization. The firm is more specializing in markets or sectors, and I think the benefit of that is trying to create some differentiation in terms of firm capabilities, right? So not everybody's a great generalist investor, right? But focusing on sectors where you have specific knowledge, background, and experience is likely to create more opportunities and helps frankly risk mitigate investments by the firm. So the one thing that we do in our case is we specialize around areas that we have experience in. So for Iron Path, we really kind of work through kind of healthcare, life sciences, especially chemicals and materials. We believe there's a nexus between all of those, right? So healthcare is really more of a market where life sciences obviously is focusing on mainly healthcare, and especially chemicals and materials is a very broad market. But within especially chemicals and materials, there's really a nexus with life sciences. So sometimes you see opportunities that span both life sciences and especially chemical type markets. So in our case, we have one partner who is an investment professional of over a couple of decades who has a lot of experience investing in this area. I'm more come from the operating side, but I've got 4 decades of experience in both life sciences and especially chemicals. And then our third partner kind of spans both. He started as an investment professional and then was an operator for many years in life sciences. So the reason I bring that out is I think being successful at deal origination comes from intent, right? So we're very intentional about where we want to invest, and then from there we spend a lot of time kind of thinking through the process to narrow that down to actual opportunities. But I think fundamentally that's probably the most important thing, right? Is really having kind of a vision and a foundation around where you want to invest, and then from there kind of crafting strategies and tactics to do the deal origination.
Sorry to interrupt. Just a quick mention of our long-standing partnership with Grata. As you will probably know, the private equity scene is constantly evolving, and deal flow is moving now to proprietary and data-driven processes. Grata provides you with the data and information of over 7 million private companies. So if you're looking to improve your proprietary deal flow and improve the data access, then reach out to Grata today. Now back to the podcast. So if we look at the did originations, as you mentioned, strategies and tactics. What methods are you currently using to originate deals into the firm? You know, you've mentioned selection of your specialist areas. What strategies are you using to originate deals?
Yeah. So what we try to do is, before we go out and go hard and wide trying to find opportunities, we'll develop a thesis, right? And so, even though we're specialized in this area, it's a very, very large market, right? So if you consider specialty chemicals as a huge global market. And so what we do is we try to focus on segments within those markets. Quite frankly, we look for things that are what we'd call like active ingredients, right? So things that are creating value for our customers. We tend to invest in B2B companies. And so, these companies tend to work with the biggest, manufacturers in the world, whether they be, in healthcare, personal care, industrial markets like automotive, electronics, et cetera, et cetera. So what we're really looking at is subsectors within this broader frame. And then once we identify them, then we have a team that will spend time developing a thesis around each, areas that we think are attractive. We don't know until we do the work, but then we'll develop a thesis around those. And the thesis will look at exactly those kinds of things, like what kind of value creation is that sector creating for the broader market? What kind of fragmentation is there? Is there a lot of, medium-sized companies, or is it dominated by one or two large players? That sort of thing. And then we'll look at kind of the underlying market trends. Are these sectors kind of supported by, long-term infrastructure growth as an example, or, the changing demographics in the healthcare market, things like that. And so we look at that, and once we have a thesis, then we will tend to, if we haven't already engaged with somebody, we'll tend to look at our networks, right? So we the other benefit of having a lot of experience in these markets is we also have a pretty big network of executives and others with expertise in the market that we can kind of recruit in specifically to support a thesis, right? So part of what we really want to try and do is understand the market really well, try to network and add to our team, either as people that might potentially be board members or otherwise have an interest in investing in the thesis that we've put together, that will use their networks to help identify and originate deals, right? So it's a sort of kind of cascading thing, going like a microscope, right? So we start with kind of a big picture, and then we really dive down deep into the market sector, trying to identify the people that can help us with the investment thesis. And that's where we found success, right? Because it's not about kind of ad hoc, or it's a strategic approach that allows us to really understand and then manage. We can look at public comps, we can look at trends within the industry. Sometimes we might have a thesis in which we don't do a deal for, a year to 18 months, right? So that whole time we're monitoring it, we're talking to lots of people. And so, we think this is, the way to invest our LPs money properly. The other part of it is, we do spend a lot of time once we have a portfolio company, then doing add-on acquisitions, right? So when you're doing a thesis, it gives us the opportunity to see, like, is buy and build a good approach to it? Are we making this investment but just because we feel like the underlying organic growth is going to be exponentially higher than other investments we might make? So it allows us this opportunity to either create a platform, and then from that platform, what's the next step, right? So we can pre-think most of the steps through to an exit strategy and a value creation, then exit strategy.
So you mentioned a few things in there with regards to leveraging executives to share deals as you positioned within your network. How are you building that network? And secondly, what are you doing? You message them saying, we're looking for businesses in this. Can you share ideas? Or is there something different going on?
Yeah, we do a couple of things. We'll use our own networks, right? So it's the people that we know, but obviously, you're probably never going to have a complete network just with people that you know. So we do use, sometimes third parties, people like yourself that, may have a great deal of experience in certain market sector with executives. And so we kind of look at it like you would sort of a recruitment assignment, right? If you were going to hire a CEO or you're going to, hire a CFO or a chief technology officer, right? So we sort of first look at like who we know, but, maybe to complete that picture or to really, test to make sure that we're getting, the best, hopefully the best possible person to support our thesis. We'll go to third parties to help us sort of introduce, not so much recruit, but sort of introduce and, begin to build and create a relationship, using, again, people like yourselves that, spend a lot of time actually thinking about like great executives and what they do and what they know.
Does the majority of your deal flow therefore come from on a proprietary basis, or are you also leveraging investment banks and other bits?
Yeah, well, we do both, obviously. I mean, we once we do the thesis, we work hard to try and find proprietary deals, but we also will share that thesis with, investment bankers and let them know what we're doing and, what our ultimate goal is and, the strategy. And so we cast I would say a wide net. We're not, no kind of pride and ownership here. If we have a relationship, we're obviously going to try and leverage that relationship. If an investment bank can help us, get us into processes that fit, with our thesis, then, obviously we want to make sure they know, what we're trying to do and accomplish so that we can participate in those deals. Particularly on the platform companies, as we get into the kind of buy and build and add-ons, sometimes the add-ons are going to be relatively small. So, it's something that where almost by definition, you sort of need to generate yourself. The investment banks are, obviously got to be careful with their time and how they're working with different size companies that they're representing. But yeah, we cast a wide net. We have, frankly, I mean, our, within our fund, most of the initial deals we've done have been proprietary. We have had a couple of kind of process deals, but we're kind of agnostic, right? So really the fit is more important than anything else, and it's we want to cast a wide net, and get as many swings at the bat as possible when we're kind of driving one of our investment theses.
Not only am I the host of the Private Equity Podcast, but I'm also the founder and managing partner of Raw Selection. Raw Selection is a private equity specialist executive search firm with two divisions, one that focuses on portfolio, C-suite executive hires, and one that focuses on private equity direct hires of your back office and investment deal professionals to the industry. Alongside the podcast, we're passionate about giving back to the industry and giving people information that they can run and utilize. One thing we do regularly every year is we run salary reports on accurate and live data of people that we've interviewed and people that have shared their information with us. So if you're looking to compare your current compensation or your compensation for your next hire in your private equity firm or portfolio company, then please check out our YouTube channel and see the playlist of salary surveys.
And your engagement with executives, are you sending kind of email outreach to them saying, look, we're looking for this? Is it you kind of calling those in your network? How are you putting that position together? Do you share with them the thesis of what you're looking for?
Yes, we do. So there's really, I guess, two ways, right? So there's a thesis that we might develop, we just out of curiosity and interest, we'll develop a thesis in an area we think is important. And when we do that, then we'll begin to go to our networks and say, hey, do you know anybody who's, sort of working in this area? We may go to, people like yourselves and ask the same question. In that case, we share the thesis, right? So right up front, we'll share the thesis with them. This is what we're trying to do, gauge their interest to support from their side, but also from our side, try to gauge the experience and how that executive might be able to help and accelerate, the thesis. And the other ones we do is where we have executives that come to us with a thesis, right? So that's the other part of, these networks is, here's the areas Iron Path's investing in. If you've got ideas, bring them to us. Well, let's sit down and talk about them. And that was, this is very much the model that I used, over 20 years ago when I started, Royal Adhesives, right? Which, I had a thesis, I had done the work, and then I brought it to the firm. But, trying to match the firm to the thesis, right? So somebody who had previously invested in the space that I was interested in, and so forth. So we kind of, those are likely be the two ways that we would work, right? So we're kind of agnostic on that too. I mean, we love it when people come to us and say, hey, I've got an idea. I know you guys have spent time in specialty chemicals. Here's what I'm thinking. That sort of thing. And we actually have a couple of good examples of that as well in our business. And so, again, this is originating deals is you can distill it down to partially science in terms of process, but the other part of it is sort of intuition and luck and relationship and so forth, right? So it's a sort of balance between those two things.
So, and your role from our previous podcast, operator now turned in investor, how are you leveraging your experience as an operator as part of your deal origination process, but also your deal close process? Because I'm sure you offer something different with being able to influence these closures, as there is also always a hesitancy to who you sell to, and there's plenty of war stories about every industry, but especially that of private equity.
Yeah, it's a great question. We one of the things that I find is, when you go to a management presentation or you're sitting in front of management and you're talking about investing in their company, if you know something about the challenges of actually running a middle market company in manufacturing, and things don't always go perfectly. You have 1 year up, 1 year down a little bit. You might have a challenge from regulator challenge of some kind. You've got all kinds of approvals and things like that to get done. You've got all the things that everybody's been faced with over the last few years with finding qualified labor to run your business. There's lots of challenges to it, right? And so being able to kind of look at a business and kind of understand the underlying value creation activity, while at the same time having some empathy with all the challenges that that a management team has in executing on a strategy, sort of helpful, right? So that and we like to align ourselves as partners, right? So we're not coming in to run the business. We're really coming in to help support the business with capital and advice, which is really the two things that we have, that can help a management team. And so, yeah, I think it's been very useful for us in the sense of being able to kind of recruit executives to work with us on theses, and also as we're meeting with potential sellers, it helps to kind of differentiate our firm a little bit, given we've got the sort of this level of operating experience at the partner level at the company.
What, being in that operator and investor seat, what one piece of advice would you give to private equity investors that would better position them to acquire, as you put it, middle market companies and build better relationships with people like you used to be as a chief exec, to sell to them over another private equity firm if they haven't got that operator exposure?
Yeah, I would say, initially, I think the first thing is really having a good balance between kind of the operator investor and the and an investment professional, right? So I do make a distinction here, right? Because, the thing I know I have to watch for myself is, I look at a company and think, well, geez, does this have these problems? I think I could fix it, right? But, that's not going to be my role to fix it, right? My role is going to be to provide advice and evaluate the management teams and determine if they're capable to meet the challenges and drive the execution of the strategy. So I would say that the team, the investment team, has to understand their own sort of strengths, weaknesses, and potential biases, right, as they're looking at investments. Because when you're looking at, you want to find, in my mind, two things, right? You want to know and understand why this business is creating value. You want to know what are the sort of the underlying trends that are gonna position it for, that put it in a good place for growth. You're gonna want to know how experienced is the team, and what's their appetite for growth, what's their appetite for some risk, right? Because the one question that people normally have with private equity is, this is particularly if it's a family company that's maybe going to recapitalize, it gets recapitalized with debt on the balance sheet, right? So now you've got a company that probably had zero debt. It's going to have some debt, we try not to, obviously, we want to create capacity for growth, right? So you don't want to put too much debt on it, but it's more debt than they probably are used to, right? So part of that is, I think that's where the operator side comes in, right? So you can help them understand. Look, I've done this before. I've operated a private equity company for over 20 years, and kind of here's how this all works. But yeah, I think. But again, we're in the business of investing, right? So it's the kind of the returns that we can generate and how they're going to be generated, and and we can have ideas that are great, but if in the end, if it's not really the management's vision for the business, then you've got a disconnect, right? So that's where, kind of, really kind of checking your, you're there to understand management's vision and how they're going to execute it, not to necessarily to, try to assume that, we've got these great opportunities. All you guys got to do is figure out how to do it, right? Because it gets down. We spend a lot of time thinking about culture when we evaluate a business. Like, what kind of management culture is there? How do they think about growth, right? It's all about like thinking about where they're at right now and where they want to be, and evaluating that is kind of the catalyst for really generating the growth that they're potentially capable of delivering.
And on the intermediary side, as you mentioned, that you're utilizing that, what have you guys been doing in order to increase some of the deal flow that comes via intermediaries?
Yeah, well, we're very active in, that's the other thing, I mentioned, it's been in the especially chemical industry for a long time and life sciences. So the other thing is over years, you get to know all the investment banks and the bankers, right? So it's, developing relationships with those bankers. And so, because I don't think people underestimate it, but it's just interesting to know that, these investment bankers that put out a process, they need to think through who potential buyers are going to be, right? And so they want to be able to kind of know and trust the people that they're going to recommend to come into a process to their client, right? So part of this is like, building a relationship where they sort of understand how you are, how you operate, what they can rely upon you. And the same thing goes the other way with the investment bankers, right? So developing those relationships really, really important. Many of them that that I've dealt with over the years are still there. There's lots of newer ones, but then they hear from the ones that are leaving about your reputation, and then you build a new reputation with them. So yeah, we've got an active, very active, set of relationships with key and in our case, sort of, healthcare, chemical bankers, life science bankers that we talk to on a pretty regular basis. Kind of keep them up to date on what we're doing, kind of what we're interested in. It's in this business, you don't want to miss a deal, right? So you want to at least be considered or told about, deals that are coming out in the market, and those relationships are really important for that.
And appreciate you sharing everything you have done on deal origination. Ted, if anybody wants to reach out with you post this podcast, how best do they get in touch, please?
Yeah, so you can reach me at tedc@ironpathcapital.com is probably the easiest. And I'm on LinkedIn as well under Theodore Clark. I think might have an M in there, Theodore M. Clark. So you can also reach out to me through the LinkedIn messaging.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much for coming on to the podcast for the second time, Ted, and sharing all about, this time, your experiences in deal origination, which is fairly unique from a person who used to be on the other side, getting deal originated too, and now you're on the private equity team, Originate to support that deal origination process. So thank you very much for coming on for a second time and sharing this.
My pleasure, Alex. Thanks. It's always great to be with you. Thank you.
Absolutely. And as always, thank you very much for all of our listeners. If you haven't already done so, please do subscribe to the podcast. But till the next time, keep smashing it. And thank you very much for listening.